Hey, it's Chris Westfall. I'm out here at sunset at Sullivan's Island Beach. It's the breach right between Isle of Palms across the street there, across the bridge, and Sullivan's Islands, where one of the famous Revolutionary War battles took place between the British troops that were on this side and the American folks on the other side, trying to defend early America. Anyway, as I was riding around with a motorcycle tonight and watching this beautiful sunset atop the Ben Sawyer Bridge, watching these sailboats go by with the beautiful sunset, I was reminded of something, a conversation that I had today with an agent who told me that the leads that he had received in the past, leads for his business, were bad. He tried telemarketed leads, they were bad. He tried direct mail leads, they didn't work for him, they were bad. And now he doesn't have any more money to invest in his business, and he's reaching out to me as a last resort. And I've heard that same story probably 900 times, probably 1,000 times in the last 8 years, as I've been helping other agents do the business that I found a lot of success in. And something came to my mind, I don't know why, riding the motorcycle tonight. It's an old scripture that I learned when I was a kid going to Christian school for 12 years. And it was this scripture that said, "You have not because you ask not." And there's a lot of meaning in that, I think. You have not because you ask not. So, I think back to the agents that I know that worked direct mail leads and complained about them. They thought the leads were weak. And those that worked telemarketed leads that didn't succeed with them, they thought the leads were weak, they could have been stronger. Don Runge, who they call the lead guru, said, "A lead is no more than a name and an excuse to have a conversation. It's just somebody to talk to." And Eugene, that works out of my office, often goes out on a dental lead, somebody interested in just a dental plan, and comes back with Medicare supplement, final expense plan, talking about an annuity, what to do with their money, all of that just because he had a lead, which is a name and an excuse to have a conversation. And I just think that's pretty awesome. You have not because you ask not. So my question would be, are you asking the right questions? Are you asking enough people? Did you give yourself enough training to learn what to say? On my website, we have a training from Stan Ballou, one of the best phone sales trainers of all time. And Stan talks about how to start the conversation, what to say in the conversation, what not to do, and how to close, and how to handle objections. So if you're not investing enough time and resources in your own business to learn how to ask better, you have not because you ask not. It's not rocket science. It's all out there. If direct mail is your thing, make it your thing and work it, because it works. If telemarketed leads are your chosen path, it works, so make it work. Newspaper ads work, flyers work, seminars work. Knocking on doors works. Cold calling on a dialer works. Predictive dialer works. Voice broadcasting works. All of it works, but what are you going to finally buckle down on, make a commitment, and ask more? So the word of the day is, cool moon up there, you have not because you ask not. So ask better questions, get the training on how to ask better, be more effective with it, and ask a heck of a lot more than you've been asking up to this point. It's not if the system works, it's will you work it. The system's not on trial, the agents are on trial, because some of them give it half the effort. And the others that don't, that take it seriously, that treat it like a real business instead of a hobby, they're doing just fine. So be encouraged. It does work. It's a decision whether it works or not.
What if I start off by telling you this, that you have not because you ask not? Yeah, that's right, that you have not because you ask not. Now, I don't know what it is that you want. Maybe perhaps as you're listening to me right now, that you've been wanting to get that promotion, or you've been wanting to start this new career, or you've been wanting to get out of debt, or you've been wanting to be healed of whatever it is that you're dealing with, some kind of ailment, some type of sickness, or you want your relationship to go to the next level, or you've been wanting and wishing to finally lose this weight once and once for all. And what if I said to you that perhaps you have not because you ask not? And so I know you might be saying to yourself that I don't know. I don't know why I haven't asked, and I don't know. I don't know. We've all been in that situation where we didn't ask. Maybe the reason why we didn't ask is because we were lacking faith. Maybe the reason why we didn't ask is because we were afraid of being rejected. Maybe the reason why we didn't ask is because we asked one time before and we got told no. I don't know why. All I know is this, is that it's a universal principle. It's a law that unfortunately, if you don't open your mouth, if you're not willing to ask, then unfortunately that thing that you're looking for, that thing that you're wanting to manifest in your life, that oftentimes it won't happen. And so it made me think about the beginning of this year, around the month of February. You know, as many of you know, my passion is speaking and mentoring and coaching, and for many of you, I've had the opportunity to coach and mentor, or you've had the opportunity to meet me as I was in your particular town, maybe delivering a speech. But others of you also know that although I'm very passionate about speaking, that I'm also very much an advocate of investing. And one of the things that I've done throughout the years is invest in real estate. And so I am still an active real estate investor. And so there's a young lady who works as my assistant. Her name is Gisela, and she's responsible for keeping the possibilities and opportunities open for me when it comes to potential real estate investments. So she's constantly looking for good deals and making offers for me. And here's one thing that's certain. If I get a phone call from Gisela, then most likely that means that we're very close to something happening. So Gisela picks up the phone. She gives me a call. I say, hello. She says, hey, Andy. She said, listen, we made an offer. I made an offer on your behalf. There's a property that's in such and such city. We have pretty much got it approved, but, it still requires you to go out and inspect the property. And I said, oh, okay, that's great. I said, well, let me check my schedule, see when we can schedule for me to take a walkthrough for the property. And I gave her a date, and she organized it, and it came on that date. And so I got in my car, and I drove over to a place in Florida called Hollandale, city in Florida called Hollandale. And when I got there, I met up with the realtor, and I pulled up at the house, and we went and we walked through the house. But unfortunately, a lot of the representations that the realtor made, that unfortunately it wasn't congruent. So when I got there, it was supposed to have 2 bathrooms. It only had 1 bathroom. The property was supposed to be in decent shape. Come to find out, it needed quite a bit of work. And there was also an issue with the property line with the neighbors next door. And so I had a conversation with the realtor, and I said, listen, unfortunately, this is not the way it was represented when we made the offer. And so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to move forward with this offer. And so the realtor, understanding as I went through all the details, he understood. He said, okay, I understand. And so I said, okay, well, you have a good day. We'll be sure to send you a cancellation letter. He said, okay. And as I was driving away, something said, Andy, pick up the phone and call this guy back and just ask if maybe possibly he has any other properties that would be worth you taking a look at. And so here I am. I literally had just left him. I was probably drove 7 minutes worth of driving. I pick up the phone and I call him back up. I said, hey, listen, we just met up, but I remember you said that particular property, it's owned by an estate. Does the estate have any other properties? And so he said, well, you know what? As a matter of fact, there is another property, but I'm not sure if you'd be interested in it because this other property, the property you just looked at, is a regular single-family home, but this other property, this is a 24-unit complex, and there's a huge, huge price difference between what you were taking a look at and the price of this thing. And I said, listen, as long as the numbers make sense, as long as it's potentially a deal, I'd love to take a look at it. He said, well, coincidentally, it's only about 5 minutes away from the property you just looked at, and I can take you there right now. I said, okay, fine. I'll turn the car around. I turned around. I drove back. There's the realtor. I start following him. We get to this property. It's a multi-unit property, and they're asking just over $700,000 for it. And if you know anything about investing, as long as the numbers make sense, you'll always be able to come up with the money. Money is never an issue as long as the numbers make sense. And so I went home and I crunched the numbers and I gave him an offer on the property. And unfortunately, he emailed me back and said, hey, Mr. Enriquez, we did receive your offer, but unfortunately, we did receive an offer in excess of your offer, a much higher offer, and we're going to go with that offer. And so at first I was disappointed. And then about a month and a half later, I see my phone ring, and I had already registered the realtor's name and number in my phone. And so the phone's ringing. I pick it up. I say, hello? And he says, hey, Mr. Enriquez, how you doing? He said, listen, do you remember you placed the offer on that multi-unit about a month and a half ago or so? Listen, unfortunately, the people who placed the order were not able to close on the property. Would you still be interested in the property? I said, listen, I've already crunched the numbers. I'd be interested in the property, but I have to have it at the price that I offered. He said, listen. He said, I think I can get the sellers to agree to your offer price. I just need to know that you're serious about getting this property. I said, absolutely. He hangs up the phone. The guy calls me back in about an hour or so and says, listen, they're going to accept the property. And so I knew in my heart that I wasn't interested in keeping this property for myself. And so I made a couple phone calls, and through a friend of a friend, we found a buyer who really loves buying multi-unit properties and was interested in buying this property. And so here we are. I finally pick up this property for $640,000, and I'm able to sell it for a little over $670 some odd thousand. The total profit was just over, I don't know, maybe about $36,000. And there was two of my buddies involved in the deal, and every single one of us, when it was all said and done, walked away with about $11,000 from this particular deal. Now, watch this. I don't tell you that to impress you, but I tell you that to impress upon you this one thing, that the only thing that I did that allowed this deal to come to fruition was that I was willing to ask. And so here's what my question is to you. What are you missing out on just because of the mere fact that you didn't take the time to ask? That you didn't take the time to call that person up and say, hey, look, I know that we've been fighting. I know we've been going through some stuff, and I know that we haven't spoken to each other for some time, but I'm asking if you would please forgive me. I'm asking if we can restore this relationship. Or maybe right now you've been putting in your resume, you've been putting in the time and the effort. Unfortunately, you haven't been able to get a job, and you're getting frustrated, you're getting tired, and there's some people that you know that you can call, that you can just ask and say, hey, look, I don't know if you know this, but I've been in the market now, and I've been looking for a job for the past 6 months, 3 months, 1 year, year and a half, 2 years, and unfortunately, I haven't been able to do this. And I don't normally do this, but I'm just asking you, do you know anybody who has any type of employment? Do you know anybody that I can make a phone call to? Do you know anybody that you can forward my resume to? As you look at your business right now and you've been wanting to grow it, that maybe perhaps that there's this superstar that can come into your business, somebody that can take your business to the next level, but you've been too afraid to ask. You didn't pick up the phone. They've been around you. They've been on your mind, but they've been on your chicken list. You've been afraid to call them because you're concerned about them saying no. You're concerned about them judging you. And what I say is this: if you ask not, then you have not. Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of people have not because they ask not. They have not receive forgiveness because they ask not. They have not received the healing because they ask not. They have not received that opportunity, that job position, that new business partner because they ask not. They have not found a way to turn their situation around because they weren't willing to ask. And just last week, I was driving in my car and I was listening to a radio station. And every once in a while, as you're listening into one of these radio stations, and I listen to some talk stations and different personal development and spiritual stations, and there's a gentleman who said something, and it stuck with me for the whole week, and I thought about this. And here's what he said. I want you to write this down. He said that the absolute worst thing, the worst thing that could be written on your epitaph, unfortunately, when we pass away, there'll normally be something that is right there where you have been buried 6 feet under, something that has your name. It shows the date you were born, a dash, the date you passed away, your epitaph. And hypothetically, we always say the thing that is written on your epitaph, the thing that you would want people to remember you for. And what this gentleman said, he said that the worst thing that could be written on your epitaph as people stand and they look over your grave is to look at it and it says this, that you have not, because you ask not. You have not lived a worthy life because you didn't ask to live a worthy life. You didn't make an impact because you didn't ask to make an impact. That you weren't the father, the mother, the sister, the brother, the person that you really should have been because you failed to ask at those important moments. And maybe it was because you lacked some faith. Maybe it's because you've been disappointed in the past. Maybe you just didn't believe that it was possible for you. And so, wouldn't that be horrible to realize that you've gone through this life and you didn't reach your full potential? You didn't do the things that God has placed you on this earth to do. That you didn't tap into this thing that's already in you. That you didn't dig deep, that you didn't find a way to go over the obstacles, that you didn't find a way to stretch, that you didn't find a way to grow, that you didn't find a way to conquer your dreams, that you didn't find a way to get out of debt, that you didn't find a way to take your business to the next level, that you didn't find a way to go ahead and change your physical health, that you didn't find a way to restore your marriage, that you didn't find a way to make it happen simply because you asked not. Yeah. You have not because you asked not. And so I was so excited. I spoke to a family friend just about 2-3 days ago, and I got so excited speaking to her that I had to have her literally tell me the story 2-3 times because it was just that hard for me to grasp. And so she is a older woman. She's at this point right now, she's probably about 68, 69 years old. And we're not going to say older. We'll say a little more experienced, a little more wisdom in age. And some years back in 2000, she bought a condo for cash. She bought it cash, free and clear. And the only thing she was responsible for is her insurance, her taxes, as well as her condo association fees. And as many of you know, things got crazy in South Florida, all across the world. Things got crazy back in 2006, 2007. The real estate market was just going up and up and up. And I mean, people were making money in real estate, hands over fist. You would hear the stories, and I mean, people were going crazy. I mean, anything that they invested in, the properties were going up. People were speculating, and she got caught up in the excitement. And she said, you know what, I got to get in on this action. So she went to the bank and she pulled out a home equity line of credit against her condo that she owned free and clear for about $75,000. She took that $75,000, not knowing exactly how everything works. She went and bought 2 lots for over $30,000 each, and she invested in a couple other stuff. And here she is now. She's excited. She thinks she's going to make all this money. And then you guys know the rest of the story. The real estate market turned. Those lots that she paid about $35,000, $37,000 for, unfortunately, those lots today are probably worth just about $4,000. And now here's this woman who has a little more experience, who's a little more age, who's at the point in her life where she's trying to dwindle down and not work as hard. And now she finds herself with this mortgage that she wasn't used to paying, that she's on this fixed income. On top of that, she's got property taxes, insurance, homeowner association fees. The homeowner association fee came out with a special assessment, and the next thing you know, she's behind. She's behind. And maybe some of you know what that feels like when unfortunately, you know, there's more months at the end of the money. And now you find yourself trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills, how you're going to keep the lights on. And then, unfortunately, life has a way of introducing you to some unforeseen circumstances, some things you didn't anticipate. Somebody gets sick, some things you didn't anticipate. The car breaks down, some things that you didn't anticipate that now all of a sudden that you've got to pay for some kind of expense that just caught you by the blind side. Someone, a family member now needs a loan and they borrow the money and they don't pay you back. Life just has a way of throwing things our way. And so here she is now. She's been behind and she continues to be behind now for a couple years. And then she comes to the realization that things have gotten literally so bad that there's a high probability that she's not going to be able to hold on to her condo. And now she's planning her exit strategy, and she's already behind, and so she's starting to save money, and she's trying to protect her savings and not keep pouring all her money into this condo that she's losing anyway. And she finally comes to the place where she says, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to call a realtor and I'm going to do a short sale on my condo. And for some of you who don't understand that terminology, a short sale is something that's very common right now because there's so many people who own properties and they're upside down in the property. In a short sale, all they're doing is they're contacting their bank and they're basically trying to get the bank to approve them selling the property for less than what they actually owe the bank. And hopefully the bank will go ahead and forbid them of whatever the difference is. And so she's dealing with this realtor, and the realtor is helping her to negotiate this short sale. Over the past 2 years, she's been struggling. She's called the bank several times. She tried to do a loan modification. She got a loan modification, which sort of kind of helped, but didn't really. And so she's just frustrated. I mean, she doesn't have the same energy that she had when she was young, and she's coming to the realization that she's about to lose this condo that she's lived in, and there's nothing she can do about it. And then she has a thought. And she says to the realtor, she says, listen, do you think that there's any way between the little bit of money that I have in my savings and because I've been getting behind and I've been saving money anyway, I've saved up some money. Do you think that there's any way I could call the bank up and convince them to take maybe a payoff for what I owe with the loan, that maybe they'll just be nice and they'll let me give them some money and they'll just go ahead and erase the rest of the loan? And the realtor laughed. She's like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? There's no way, absolutely no way that they're going to do that. And she said, matter of fact, if they did do that, then everybody would be doing that. Come on. I mean, I know this is a tough emotional process for you, but let's just deal with this short sale. And she said, you know, the realtor told her this, but she said she didn't want to accept it. And she said that over the next couple of days, she found herself just continually praying and staying in meditation. And she said she was sitting in her living room. She was sitting on the couch, and she looked over at the phone, and something just told her, pick up the phone and call. Just pick the phone up and make the call. Just ask. Well, what's the worst that can happen? Just pick the phone up and ask. And so she picks the phone up and she calls their department that handles the people who are behind and people who are trying to do loan modifications. And she calls the guy up and she explains, she said, listen, you know, I own this condo free and clear. When the real estate market was booming, I got an equity line of credit. I made some investments. The things didn't go well. As you can see on the records, I've been struggling over the past couple years. I've attempted to get right, but I've just gotten too far behind. I've attempted to do some loan modifications with you. One of them went through. through. It still couldn't get things together. She said, listen, I'm telling you right now, I saved up some money. I have some money in my savings, and I was holding on to it because I came to a realization I'm going to lose this condo. And I just need this so I can make exit strategy. But let me ask you a question. Do you think is there any way that you can talk to somebody there that you can that maybe see that if they'll just look at my file and if they'd be willing to do some type of settlement, I'll do a payment and they'll just go ahead and start me over. Just remove the debt, please. And she was expecting maybe a no or. And so the gentleman on the phone said, he said, can you hold the phone for a second? I'm going to put you on hold, ma'am. Is that okay? And so he clicks over, he puts her on hold. She waits. He clicks back over. And he said, ma'am, I just spoke to the head of the department. And he said that we can do it. She said, excuse me, ma'am, I spoke to the department head and he said that we can do it. Well, she said, okay. Oh my God, that's great. Do you well, do you know how much? I mean, I owe you guys just over $75,000 between everything I owe. I mean, what are they willing to settle for? And he said, ma'am, we are going to fax you the paperwork. And she said, awesome. I was going to ask you if I could get it right. He said, no problem. We're going to fax it. She said, when can you fax it right away? He said, ma'am, we'll have it to you within the hour. She waits patiently by the fax machine. Eventually, the fax comes through. She goes to the fax machine. She picks up the paper, and as she's looking at the paper, she can't believe what she's reading. And the bank is agreeing to wipe out her debt of just over $75,000 if she's willing to pay them $20,000 over the next 6 weeks, if she can come up with the money. She's in shock. And the reason why she's in shock is because $20,000 is exactly what she has saved up. And she can't believe that she's about to own this property again free and clear. After all these years of struggling, all because she was willing to ask. And so here we are, missing out on the blessing, struggling, questioning what's going on, all because we ask not. And so I put some thought into it. And I said, well, what's required in order for us to ask? And if you're a note taker, I want you to write these things down real quickly. What's required? Number one, you have to have some faith. You see, a lot of times we don't ask because we don't believe that it's even possible. That we don't ask because somewhere along the line we've convinced ourselves that it's not even a possibility that this person would say that, okay, I forgive you. We don't ask because we don't even think that it's a possibility that somehow, some way, miraculously, that our body can be restored. That we don't even think that it's a possibility that this marriage that's been struggling, that's on its last leg, that somehow, some way, that it could be salvaged. That we don't even think it's a possibility that this person would be willing to go ahead and assist us and get involved in our business. That we don't think it's a possibility that after searching for months and months that we're going to be able to get this job, and let alone get this job, but be able to get this promotion. That we don't think it's a possibility. And so we have not because we ask not. And so what do we have to do? We have to have some faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the things are not seen. And realize this, that Martin Luther King said this, that faith is taking the first step, even when you can't see the entire staircase. Yeah. And so the first step is you got to have faith. Even when you look at the circumstances and you can't see and you can't understand why. It takes faith to ask. And so the second thing, I want you to write down these two questions. And I thank Star Baba Tune for giving these to me, because I think they're powerful questions. And so the first question you have to ask yourself when you find yourself trying to figure out what is required in order for me to ask, the first thing you got to say to yourself is, what is the worst thing that could happen if I actually asked for that promotion? What's the worst thing that could happen if I actually asked this person for help? What's the worst thing that could happen if I actually asked for forgiveness? What's the worst thing that could happen if I asked, if I dug in deep and I asked that somehow, some way, that something shifts, that all of a sudden now these cells that are in my body, that somehow they reposition themselves and that my health recover? What's the worst thing that could happen? And then here's the second question. Once you've decided what's the worst possible thing that could happen, the next question to ask yourself is this: if that thing happened, if it happened, this worst thing that I have in my mind, that they said no, the worst thing that could happen, that I got rejected, the worst thing that could happen, that it didn't exactly work out the way I intended. Think of what that worst thing is, and then the second thing to ask yourself is this: would you be able to live with it? Could you live with the fact that they said, no, we're sorry, unfortunately, we're not hiring? Could you live with the fact that the person said, no, even though you're asking me for forgiveness, unfortunately, I'm not going to forgive you? Could you live with the fact that maybe perhaps you talk to this person about your business opportunity, they say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm not interested right now? Could you live with the fact that you've gone to this person and said, hey, I want to take our relationship to the next level, and they said no, unfortunately? Could you live with it? And here's what I know: the chances are you could. Because somebody else has dealt with that rejection. Somebody else, unfortunately, things didn't work out, and guess what? They're still here. That no, that rejection did not take them out. And so once you've gotten past the point, then realize that you can ask and it's not going to kill you. Once you've decided within yourself that I'm going to exercise some faith, understanding this, that faith is a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, then finally, what do you have to do? The third and final thing, you just have to ask. Ask for that promotion. Ask that your health is going to turn around. You've got to ask that hopefully that now that even though you've been in this market and you've been trying to find this job, that all of a sudden now there's going to be an opportunity. The right person is going to cross your path. Your resume is going to fall on the right desk. You're going to speak to the right person. They're going to point you in the right direction. And next thing you know, you've been unemployed for a year and a half. And next thing you know, next week you'll be taking your stuff and you'll be showing up at your new job. If you're just willing to ask that maybe possibly this thing that you've been dealing with, that you've been wanting to turn around, that you've been trying to get out of debt, that you've been trying to lose this weight once and once for all, if maybe you had the faith enough to ask that all of a sudden now this thing would happen, the right things would come together, you'd find a boot camp, a right partner, something all of a sudden would motivate you, you'd be a shift. Something happens when you ask. You open yourself to the possibility. Something happens once you ask. All of a sudden now, life is just positioned a different way. All of a sudden you go from being closed to being open. All of a sudden now you find things start happening in your life. And so what I say is this: that I agree with the gentleman that I heard on the radio, that one of the worst things that could ever be written on your epitaph is this: you have not, because you ask not. This has been Andy Henriquez reminding you to always show up for your life. Because if you don't, ladies and gentlemen, no one else will.